Right, thank you, members. Welcome everyone to the Planning Applications Committee, 25th of November here in the Civic. And to those observing the meeting on Microsoft Teams. Fire alarms procedure, there are no fire drills expected this evening, so in the event of an alarm sounding, please quickly make your way out of the building. There are 3 exits from this room which members can use to vacate the premises. Please switch all mobile phones onto silent or switch them off, and if you do receive any calls, take them outside the meeting room. Do not have any possessions unaccompanied. Don't leave them anywhere, and if you do see any unaccompanied possessions, please report them. Remember to take possessions with you when the meeting is concluded or as you leave the meeting. This meeting may be subject to filming or audio recording by others in accordance with the Council's filming protocol. Anyone who remains in the meeting following this announcement will have deemed to have consented to allow their image to be recorded and broadcast. Thank you. I'll start the agenda proper. Item 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
Chair, we have apologies from Councillors Abbs and Councillor Metcalfe, and Councillor Whitby will substitute for Councillor Abbs.
Thank you. Are there any further apologies? No. Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Tempest Mitchell. Thank you. Any other declarations of interest? No. Thank you. Move on to item 3. Minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of October 24. Could I have a proposer and seconder for those minutes? Councillor Hammersley, Councillor Answer. Are there any amendments subject to accuracy? Nobody's indicated. Can we put the minutes to the vote then, please? All those in favour who are in attendance, please show. Thank you. The minutes are approved. I'll move on to the agenda. Because there's a speaker down to speak on item 7, who is a member of the public, I'm going to move item 7 to the beginning of the agenda rather than leaving it to the end. So rather than moving straight on to item 4, we're going to take item 7 first. So, planning application reference 2024-0460 HHA, proposed loft conversion, dormer extension to the rear elevation and window to the front elevation at cellar level, 19 Stanley Road, Mansfield. Could I invite the officer to make the report, please?
Thank you. The application site is a 2-story property at the end of a row of 4 terrace houses to the south of Stanley Road. Number 19 currently features a 2-story monopitched projection and single-story flat roof projection to the rear. The immediate area contains a row of terrace houses similar to the host dwelling. The proposal is for a loft conversion, new dormer extension, and a new window and window well to the front at basement level. It is noted that the amended proposed floor layout plans shows an interior alteration from 2-bedroom to 6-bedroom and relatively small shared common spaces, which suggests a change of use from Class C3 to C4. Comments about the concerns on the impacts of the 6-bedroom proposal has been received, which include concerns to the number of HMO on the same street, extra traffic and issues with parking, noise and rubbish from bins, type of tenants, impact on property values, and landlord reviews. However, due to the proposal not resulting in the number of future occupants not exceeding 6 residents, which does not require planning permission, the assessment of the proposed development relates solely to the external alterations of the dwelling as described above. It should be noted that there is also a permitted development fallback as additional roof space in form of a roof dome and can be created up to 40 cubic meters for terrace houses without requiring planning permission. The total cubic content of the rear dome extension is approximately 19 cubic meters, which complies with the above restriction. It is considered that the other restrictions within Class B, such as the requirement for any new dome extensions to have materials that are of a similar appearance to the existing dwelling, have also been complied with. This has been afforded significant weight in assessing whether planning permission should be granted. Therefore, given the permitted development rights, the scope of this application solely relates to the proposed loft conversion with dormer extension to the rear and cellar window with window well to the front. This is a photo of the front elevation of the house. And this is where the cellar window and window well will be located, which is to the front of the property. This is the rear elevation of the property, and this is what the rear garden looks like. In terms of impacts on visual amenity, given the nature, location, and scale of the proposed cellar window, which would be screened by front boundary wall, and the double window, which would be located to the rear of the property, and a front roof light, as well as similar materials to existing being proposed, it is considered that this element of the proposal will not pose an adverse impact on the character and appearance of the dwelling or immediate street scene. In terms of impact on residential amenity, given the nature, dimensions, and location of the proposed cellar window and rear dormer window, which will not directly face onto the rear gardens of adjacent neighbors, it is considered that this element of the proposal will not pose an adverse impact on overlooking, overshadowing, and overbearing to the neighboring properties. Concerns on noise and rubbish from bins in relation to the proposed internal alteration to a 6-bedroom dwelling have been raised. However, as discussed previously, the property can be changed to a use falling within Class C4, which is an HMO, allowing the building to be occupied by up to 6 individuals without the need of planning permission. It is therefore considered that the level of noise, waste generation, and other concerns raised by local residents, whilst acknowledged, would likely be similar to the level of noise and waste generated by a typical residential dwelling. As such, it is considered that these concerns will not result in an unacceptable impact on the living conditions or broader amenity of the existing or future occupiers of the adjacent dwellings. In terms of parking provision, it is noted that concerns have been raised regarding issues with traffic and parking. In this case, the host dwelling, like many of its neighboring properties, has no off-street parking provision and will not have sufficient space to provide any in the future. Whilst the application site is located outside of the Mansfield town centre, it is served by multiple bus routes to the town centre, bus station, and train station. A residence parking scheme is also operated on this section of Stanley Road by Nottinghamshire County Council, which limits parking to be permit holders only from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Saturday. Given that the majority of the alterations proposed could be undertaken without planning permission, it is considered that the level of traffic generated of the proposed development would be unlikely to be different to that of a typical residential dwelling, which can allow for up to 6 residents to live together as a single household. On balance, given the location of the site and the permitted development rights, it is considered that the shortfall of parking provision is acceptable, and refusal in this regard will not be justifiable in this instance. Overall, it is considered that the proposed development is in line with the adopted Mansfield District Local Plan Policies P6, P7, and IN9, IN10, and the guidance of the MPPF. it would not have adverse impacts in terms of visual amenity, residential amenity, highway safety, and parking provision. Therefore, the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions.
Thank you for your report. I'm now going to invite the speaker, Mrs. Burnside. Objector, if you'd like to come to the podium. If you just like to switch your speaker on by pressing that button, and then you've got 4 minutes when you're ready. Thank you.
If this development goes ahead as the third HMO on our street, how many more will follow? Will the existing Victoria sewage system be upgraded to take into account the extra people living in our street? As myself and neighbours have had problems already with sewerage. Bins in the HMO always overflowing with waste. In summer, full of maggots. Witnessed by health inspector. If this HMO goes ahead, residents are already worried about devaluation of their properties and will they be able to sell them? Parking is an issue, a problem not helped by the MOT taking many of our spaces, causing more problems. Will any of these issues be addressed before a decision is made? Okay.
Good. Right. I'll ask members. Do members have any questions of Mrs. Burnside? Councillor Stevenson.
Just to clarify, and thank you for your speech, just to clarify, you say the MOT, do you mean like a garage that has cars that they park on the street that are getting serviced by the garage?
Sorry, I can't hear that well. I'm sorry.
My apologies. In regards to where you mentioned MOT,
Yes,
is that because there's a garage that services vehicles and they park their vehicles on your street? Is that right?
Yes.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
Thank you for coming tonight and thank you for your input. Can you tell us where you live in comparison to this house and also how many other residents have you spoken to, please?
I live the third from the bottom in the old Victorian terraced houses, the left-hand side going down. Before you go into the cul-de-sac. Yes, I have spoke to quite a few people.
So the people that you've spoken to, what's their general thought process on it? Is it their process similar to yours, the information that you've given us?
Yes.
Councillor Whitby.
Hi, I was just going to ask about the parking scheme that's in place. Is it effective? Are you able to park normally with this scheme in operation, or is it oversubscribed?
Difficult to park. Come 6 o'clock, we are fighting for spaces.
6 p.m. is when the permit scheme ends, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The people coming home from work early in the afternoon are fine. But if you come home after 6 o'clock, then it is a problem parking. Because the top of the street was permit parking only, and it was changed a couple of years ago. So now the MOT place take all those spaces and everybody else is getting pushed back further down the street.
Any further questions? Right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, do members have any questions of the officers? Yep. Councillor Richardson. Stevenson, should say. Sorry.
Thank you. It was just to clarify officers' understanding of this garage parking vehicles on the street and the parking scheme that seems to be in place. From I think what I've gathered from what's being mentioned is half of the street doesn't have this parking scheme anymore, and so the MOT garage is parking their vehicles there, causing further issues. Was that your officers' understanding as well?
Yes, I think that's right. I don't think it's. I think it goes up to about 6 p.m. But then I think there's a car garage there that does actually take up the spaces that the residents are supposed to park in. Obviously, just to clarify here, that the dwelling has no parking in any case. So that's the main issue really, and that the recommendation to grant.
Councillor Jackson.
I just want to clarify the objections and concerns are based on the principle of this property becoming an HMO, but we're here to determine whether the planning permission for a loft extension and a cellar window can go ahead. Is that, I'm just clarifying my understanding of what we're here to look at.
Thanks for that question. I'll let the team answer that, but basically a lot of the planning application is under permissive building rights, and an HMO is sort of governed by a different set of people. We're here to consider a planning application, not an HMO. So I'll let the officers explain properly and maybe legal.
Okay, so the application under determination here is solely for the external alterations, for the dormer window and for the cellar window to the front. What's happened in this application is it came in as a slightly different proposal that definitely needed planning permission, but through negotiation with the planning officer, it's been reduced down somewhat. So some of it now, the majority of it really doesn't need planning permission. So, for example, the dormer window probably could be built under permitted development rights, but the cellar window does need planning permission because it's an engineering operation coming forward. But I appreciate we've had a lot of objections in terms of the property being a HMO. And the reason for this is obviously the floor plans have been submitted with the application, which is showing that. And obviously have some sympathy in terms of car parking around here. But the ultimate fact is that a dwelling along here can be changed into a C4 use without the need of planning permission. So that is not being considered by this planning application. It's solely for the dormer window and the cellar window and the external alterations.
I'm pressing the right button.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, I'm on. I mean, Councillor Jackson, you're absolutely right. In terms of a house in multiple occupation, that will be considered by the local housing authority with a view to either granting or not granting a licence for a house in multiple occupation. So it doesn't fall within the remit of planning. Interestingly, our speaker also referred to issues around build-up of sewage and effluent. That's a matter for your water authority, which I think is the same as mine at Severn Trent, but you're correct. Oh, I'm seeing nods of approval. They stretch all the way up here, so that's good. So that will be a matter that's not for planning again, but for Severn Trent. Thank you.
Any other questions, members? No one's indicated. Could I have a proposal and second for recommendations? Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Whitby. Debate. Anybody want to comment? Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you. Just to say, I appreciate the concerns that have been raised from the speaker and the comments that have been made on the application itself. But the reality of this one is that majority of the application doesn't need to be an application and could go through without any planning anyways. And so I don't think a lot of the issues that have been raised would be any different if the application hadn't gone ahead and they'd just done it under permitted development. So I don't really see any reason that this couldn't be accepted. And so I'll be voting to approve it.
Anyone else wishing to comment? Councillor Moxon.
Yeah, just very quickly, sort of in many of the same points that Councillor Stevens has just said, that, you know, that I think the HMO things are a bit of a red herring almost, because this could go ahead without it being turned into a HMO. But just on the parking thing, I would suggest that residents around there contact the county councillor and go down that route of if it's not working properly, trying to change the how the parking scheme is working, because I see on Google Maps that it appears to only be the residents' parking scheme on one side, and then the other side of the road is a 2-hour limit, certainly around where the garage is. So if residents don't think it's working properly, I think it should, regardless of this application going forward, I recognise it's probably going to make matters slightly worse, but you know, I think they should you contact your local county council and attempt to get it changed if it's not working for them.
Yeah. Any further comment? Councillor Whitby.
Yeah, I think I'd probably speak on for everybody when we, you know, nobody wants to see an HMO in an area where it's not going to be able to be supported, and that street is notoriously difficult to park on anyway. It's not going to be big enough for, in my opinion, for an HMO, and the waste and the additional waste that would create is a big concern as well. But as has been pointed out, that it's outside of the bounds of what we're considering tonight, I think. So it means we're pretty much snooking in terms of that, objecting to an HMO in principle. But in terms of the application, yeah, it seems okay.
Anyone else wishing to make a comment? I just confer that it's the planning side that we're looking at, and the majority of the planning application would be permissive building rights. The two bits of it that we're looking to approve are fairly straightforward, and the possible HMO should be looked at under licensing conditions. Good comments about the parking. If residents can approach the county council about the parking scheme if they think it's not working right, we might be helping them. Right. With that, we'll move to the vote then, please. Could I have a show of hands, all those in favour? Please show. That's unanimous. So, planning application 2024 0460 HHA, proposed loft conversion, dormer extension to the rear elevation and a window to the front elevation at cellar level, 19 Stanley Road, Mansfield, has been granted planning permission with conditions. Thank you. If any members of the public were wishing to leave, they can leave now before we go on to the next item. If you're not, you can stay. You're quite welcome to stay for the rest of the committee. Okay, I'll move back onto the agenda, original agenda item 4. which is planning application reference 2024-0309, reserve matters, application for approval of reserve matters for the construction of 156 new homes with associated infrastructure, including drainage, highways, open space, SUDs, and surface water drainage, including conditions 4, 8, and 17 of the outline plan application 2019-0183 out on land at Redruth Drive, Mansfield, land off Old Newark Road, Redruth Drive, Mansfield. Could I invite the officers to make a report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for reserved matters. Apologies. This is an application for the reserved matters for outline consent granted in November 2022 for residential development on land at Redruth Drive. Can I refer you first to the update sheet, which has been circulated to all members for the purposes of the public who won't have seen this information. I'll just summarise the content. Following the drafting of the report, updated documents have been received relating to bat activity, nightjar and woodlark surveys, protected species, reptile mitigation strategy. As a consequence, we've received updated consultation responses. Mansfield ecologist, final comment, mitigation measures in the SEMP are appropriate. Further breed surveys not required. Loss of hedgerows, no ecology objections raised. Bat boxes suggested in the woodland area and any dwellings around the periphery. Condition 14, which is a biodiversity, green infrastructure requirement under the outline condition. The majority of the requirements have been accorded with. There are some outstanding matters though to be dealt with, and some which are not able to be resolved in terms of the reserve matters application. Nottinghamshire County Council have commented that they are confirming that the updated plans list, which is set out in your update sheet, are the ones that have been reviewed by the Highway Authority, and those plans are acceptable. We have an updated neighbour comment. One further letter of objection has been received relating to the location of the leap and referring to the committee's report comment that the location is at the entrance to the development and overlooked. The question raised is, does this mean the playground has to be policed by the residents, or are we just going to have to put up with any type of antisocial behaviour? This area will attract even more antisocial behaviour than we have now, and the so-called higher level of security will not deter it. You have an approved revised plans list. These plans are updates in terms of revision numbers, so no additional plans to those set out in the report. Updated information. The report is updated to clarify the existing hedgerow on the northern boundary with the part completed housing estate on Sherwood Avenue is being replaced by a close boarded fence. That work was undertaken by the adjoining developer. The committee report therefore is incorrect when it refers to the hedge being there at present. In relation to the car parking spaces, the updated layout plans have been amended to accord with Nottinghamshire County Highways standards, which is the reason for the updated plans list. The applicant has requested the clarification is provided to the loss of the category B tree referred to in the report. This was permitted under the outline consent and sits on the access point for the site. There are further comments in relation to the ecologist report that I set out in her consultation response. In terms of the conditions themselves, and apologies for these adjustments, condition 4 and 5 of your report have been incorrectly duplicated. Condition 5 should have said bound surfaces for the private drives and for the parking spaces. Apologies in that respect. Condition 8 is amended just slightly in terms of the wording. The substantive condition though stands. Condition 9 is updated to the latest plan reference. Condition 14 is amended to no dwelling shall be occupied until a detailed hard surface plan has been submitted. Condition 18, notwithstanding the submitted trouble plan, revised trouble plan to be submitted prior to occupation of any dwelling. Condition 24 is a new condition, and that's a requirement for the submission of a revised green infrastructure, biodiversity and ecological management plan, setting out various elements that we would want to see now in this condition. Those relate to the updates for that committee, for the application. In respect to the application itself, it's an application for 156 dwellings on the land. Site is adjoins the Bellamy Road and Redruth Road sites. Access points, which was secured through the outline, are to Bellamy Road and to Redruth Road. The site's laid out with a main road running through the site and then side roads off. The site to the north is an adjoining site of 44 dwellings that's currently being built out. To the south of the site is Old Newark Road and then the Lyndhurst Estate land. To the east is the Sherwood Oaks Business Park. The proposal includes a LEAP, open space, drainage, highways matters, compliance with Condition 4 master plan and phasing plan, Condition 6 housing mix, and 17 health impact assessment on the outline consent. Proposal is for a mix of 2-storey houses ranging from 1 to 4 bedrooms to include 17 affordable houses. Of these, 12 are 1-bedroom units, 48 are 2-bedroom units, 57 are 3-bedroom, and 39 are 4-bedroom. They're brick-built houses, 2-storey, mix of semi-detached and terrace properties. This is slightly at odds with the council's mix in terms of policy, but not substantially so. The steer in terms of the council's own housing policy mix is a steer towards 3-bedroomed and 2-bedroomed houses, a slightly lower percentage of 4-bedrooms. So we've got a slight mismatch here. However, policy officers haven't raised an objection on those grounds. Footpath links within the site are proposed to Sherwood Avenue and a link to the existing footpath to the front of Girton Court to the north of the site, on the north side of the site, and a link to Old Newark Road. Areas of open space are provided in the southwestern area of the site, so on the corner of Redruth. A smaller area, which you can see, which is by Girton Court, and then the Suds area, which adjoins Old Newark Road, which takes up the majority of that area, but will be classified as public open space. There's also a swale running through that area. The LEAP is shown in the left-hand corner of the site, as you can see on the public open space. A trim trail is shown in the area to the front of Girton Court and Gunthorpe Court, and the Suds and the swale are on the Old Newark Road site. Currently, the site's overgrown with a number of self-seeded and some planted trees related to the Bellamy estate, and some hedgerow along Old Newark Road. Conditions were attached to the outline requiring the planting to be retained and the ecology protected. As you will see from the number of letters of objection, there is there is considered to be a significant amount of ecology on the site. This was covered off by condition 14. Up-to-date surveys of the trees have confirmed that the majority of the trees are in fact of poor quality, and there's no justification for the retention. As a consequence, the application is designed with a tree buffer belt, retaining the best of the trees and then introducing planting within the site, including verges and street trees. So we have a buffer zone adjacent to the properties around Gorton Court and Gunthorpe Court. Hedges along Old Newark Road are retained and reinforced, and we have an offer to replant the hedgerow lost on the site on the northern boundary. The landscape scheme has been submitted and in principle is acceptable. There are a couple of tweaks that need to be done to it, and as a consequence we haven't listed that on the approved plans, but we will be seeking an adjustment to them. But in principle what you see on the landscape plan is pretty much as you will see delivered on the site. The tweaks relate to some planting around the suds area and to planting within the visibility displays for the parking spaces. In relation to highways, the route is designed to allow a bus route through, and as part of the outline permission, 3 bus stops are required to be provided. One of those is outside the site, so the buses will route along Old Newark Road and through into Bellamy Road. As a secondary part of that, there is a requirement to improve the connectivity, pedestrian connectivity along Old Newark Road, so that is a pavement extension or new pavement to extend from the site edge to Ruddington Road. Travel plans submitted with the application. An open sud scheme is submitted, and that will be served by a swale, and then the houses will be served by what are known as subground crates. So they will just be dealing with the runoff from the houses and the roofs. Local concerns relate to very specifically to wildlife, to the location of the leap, the impact on highways. In terms of highways, the site is an allocated site. It has the benefit of outline planning permission. The highways matters have been, in terms of highways capacity, that has been assessed at outline and was accepted. There is a requirement to accord with the outline conditions, and in the report these are set out for clarity in terms of matters that will also be required to be complied with, along with the conditions on the outline application. The design of the houses, 2-storey, brick built, family-sized accommodation. The scheme has gone through a number of iterations, and the one before you now is the final scheme that at officer level we consider is supportable. Recommendation is to approve.
Thank you for your report. I'm going to invite to the podium Barry Herod, the applicant, if you'd like to come forward, please. When you're ready, if you want to switch your microphone on, you've got 4 minutes, Barry.
Good evening, committee. My name is Barry Herod. I'm a Chartered Town Planner and Senior Planning Manager at Vista Group, speaking in support of this application. Committee, this site is allocated in your adopted local plan and already benefits from outline planning permission for up to 169 dwellings. It is in fact allocated in the local plan for approximately 178 dwellings. Prior to submission of this application for approval of reserved matters, we have engaged with your officers and your urban design consultant to create a place that would be an asset to the area and occupiers of the new homes. We will be providing a mix of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom homes, of which 17 will be constructed and then transferred to a registered provider of affordable homes as is required by your policy and the Section 106 agreement, which was agreed as part of the outline planning permission. In addition, the Section 106 agreement will provide for financial contributions towards the provision of 3 bus stops within the site, a contribution of £91,000 towards healthcare infrastructure, a secondary education contribution of £840,000, a special education needs contribution of £90,000, and a contribution of £10,000 towards waste management. Additional benefits will be the provision of open spaces and a play area which will be available also for use by existing residents. We've undertaken a successful translocation of common lizards to the Vicar Waters Country Park and have updated bat and bird surveys. As your office has advised, there are no ecological impediments which shall prevent development from proceeding. We will also undertake to replace the hedge line to the northern boundary, which has been removed by the developer of the site to the north. Ecological enhancements will be provided across the site with bird and bat boxes, reptile hibernacula, native hedgerow planting, wildflower seeding of areas of open space, and wetland wildflower meadow proceeding to the suds attenuation features. All homes will be provided with solar panels and EV charging points. There are no objections to the application from any of your statutory consultees, and as I've said previously, we've worked collaboratively with your officers and other consultees for over a period of some 12 months. In summary, this application seeks planning permission for 156 desperately needed new homes in this area, and I invite you to endorse your officer's recommendation and approve this application this evening. If there are any questions, I'm happy to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Do members have any questions? Councillor Hammersley.
Just a quick one. You said you're making a contribution towards a local country park. Which country park did you say?
The common lizards were transferred to Vicar Waters. There's no off-site contribution as such. In addition to that, that's where the lizards have been translocated to. There's no off-site contribution towards existing open space as far as I'm aware in 106.
So it's just for the transfer of the...
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a couple of questions. The one-bedroomed houses, are they houses? Are they flats? Can you just tell me a bit more about those?
The one-bedroom units are effectively masonettes, so they from a visual point of view, they look like a conventional house.
Yeah.
And they provide effectively one-bedroom self-contained accommodation to the ground floor and self-contained accommodation to the first floor, each with their own entrances. They also have the benefit of they actually have private garden areas to each. So the first floor will also have a dedicated private garden area as part of the open space provision for that plot. But visually, they look very similar to a house, two-story house. Yeah.
Thank you. If I may, Chair, just another quick question. I know there have been concerns from residents around a park and antisocial behaviour. At this stage, are you able to comment on any target hardening or community safety measures that might be put in place to alleviate those concerns?
So the park or the open space area with the equipment is proposed at the entrance to the site. There's also or was a trim trail proposed within the smaller area of open space. I know that officers have raised some concerns about the nature of the equipment we were proposing in that area. So I think that again is subject to a suggested planning condition where we'll look at the nature of that equipment within that smaller parcel. In terms of the open space and the play equipment that's going to be sited at the entrance to the site, that was an area that we did look very closely at in conjunction with the council's urban design advisor, and it was decided that was the most ideal location. The fact that it was at the entrance to the site, not secluded around in any of the corners of the site. It's always a difficult one because open space is required somewhere. clearly there may be an issue there with perhaps attracting, undesirable elements of society. But at the end of the day, there's a requirement within the consent to provide a play area. We think it's the most suitable. And there will be an element, hopefully, of self-monitoring of that area, being as it is at the entrance to the site with traffic generation, pedestrian movement around that area.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you for your report. Just going on a little bit further from the play area, am I right in thinking that the trim trail will be in that bit on Girton Close, is it? Top left-hand side?
Yeah, that's the area where it is proposed. As I said, no officers have raised some concerns rather belatedly about the location and the nature of the equipment within that area. So we're happy to have another look at that, both the locational terms and also the nature of the equipment. I mean, it may well be that the equipment or an alternative form of equipment could be placed at the entrance into the site. But again, I think that's something that obviously officers will need to look at in terms of the suggested condition.
Okay, thanks. And one more, Chair, if I can.
Yep.
Are there any areas that are communal areas where there'll be a management fee for residents to upkeep?
Yeah, so effectively there is an open, for my collection, there is a clause within the Section 106 agreement that requires an open space management scheme to be agreed. In general, most of the sites that we're developing, the areas of open space would be transferred to a management company, and it would be the residents that would be effectively paying for the management fees for those areas of open space. So in those instances, the council would not have the liability of taking on the ongoing maintenance of those areas. It would sit with the residents and ultimately with Vistra's management company to ensure that those areas were kept in a good state of repair.
Councillor Stevenson.
Sorry, just a quick one. I realise there's been a lot of questions. You mentioned solar panels and EV chargers on properties. Can you just clarify, was that every property?
Yes, that will be the case. Yeah, I mean, from a building regs point of view now, every property that has parking within its curtilage is required under the building regs to provide EV parking. So by default, because parking is provided within curtilage, all of these plots would be provided with EV. And solar panel would be a choice that we would make to provide those on every plot as well. That's correct, yeah.
I'm pleased to hear a common gripe with new buildings tends to be why don't they all have solar panels on them? And just clarify in regards to the one-bed properties that are, as you mentioned, like masonettes, how would the solar generation be handled between one roof and essentially two owners?
That's a technical question I probably can't give you an answer to. But I would imagine it's readily achievable. Yeah, I mean, most of the houses here have got two planes. The orientation sometimes presents a bit of an issue, but I would imagine that's probably technically achievable somehow.
More of one to satisfy my curiosity. That one, I appreciate. Not aware of it. Thank you.
Okay.
Any further question, Councillor Whitby?
Yeah, you might not be able to answer it, but do you know what the development to the north of the site is, where the northernmost properties will back onto, that's currently under development?
I don't know. My understanding is that development may have stalled recently. Certainly when I was out there some weeks ago, the hedge line had been removed and replaced with a close bordered fence. But I'm not quite sure what's happening on that site at the moment. Perhaps that's something that your officers might be able to assist with.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ansell.
Thanks, Chairman. Just referring to the report on page 14, and Edinburgh Police on the 18th of June, it says development is situated in a higher than average area for crime and disorder and represent a significant risk unless crime prevention mitigation is put in place, and recommends that the development achieves a secure by design accreditation prior to occupation. Can you explain what that means then, please?
Yes, so basically the police are a consultee on most applications of this nature. They will generally make those sort of comments on many sorts of residential applications. In terms of their comments about the nature of crime within the area, that is a given. Obviously, the site has got the benefit of an outline planning permission. So in terms of looking at the details, I suppose our overriding concern is to make sure that the residents of this development are safe and secure in their homes. Obviously, we provide fairly high standards of security, alarm systems, all windows and doors are to develop British standards. In terms of secure by design accreditation, that is something we will consider. It's not something that planning control effectively governs. It's a decision of a developer, ultimately a registered provider, as to whether or not they seek secure by design accreditation. But I think the committee can rest assured that the standards of crime prevention and security we will be providing for our homeowners and purchasers is as high as it can be. We're looking at things like, double-sided locks to side gates, those kinds of things to enhance protection and security.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillor? Answer? No. Any other questions? No one's indicated, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. Do members have any questions of the officers? Councillor Whitby.
Just to repeat my question about the development to the north of the site, I don't know if it would have any impact on this, but it'd be useful to know what those properties to the north will be backing onto.
Development 44 dwellings to be occupied as affordable housing units. And yes, when we looked at this application, we did look at the relationship between the two, and it would be a back-to-back, so back garden to back garden arrangement.
Do you have any further questions of officers? Councillor Answer.
Thank you, Chairman. Looking at the conditions, there's quite a lot of conditions whereby they can't start, or they can't do this, or they can't do that. I mean, there is a lot of conditions there that the developers have got to abide by before various actions take place. Is that normal, or is that something that should have been resolved beforehand?
Chair, through the chair, yes, there are a lot of conditions on this application. Some do necessitate a significant number, and a substantial amount of these are actually highways related conditions. The tests are in terms of applying conditions to any planning permission are they reasonable, are they necessary? And in this case, each one of those conditions has been gone through and agreed with the applicant that they are appropriate and they're happy to accept them. We have tried to minimise where possible that the conditions don't require information and submission of details before commencement of development where it's appropriate. Where there is a need for protection, though, then they have been agreed to be pre-commencement with the applicant, and Vistry have been in detailed discussions with me on each of the conditions.
Yeah. Any further questions from the officers? I'd just like to clarify something.
Yeah, sorry, Simon, but this one isn't actually an SUE. It is just a large major. It's a major application, but it is quite normal to have conditions on it, as Simon has said. So when you're looking at planning applications, if you can deal with something by condition, that's what you should do in order to make the planning application acceptable.
Any further questions? No indications? Could I have a proposal and second for the recommendation? Councillor Hammersley, Councillor Bell. In debate, anyone want to comment? No comment? Move to the vote then please by show of hands. For those in favour of the application, please show. Thank you. That's a unanimous decision. So, planning application reference 2024-0309, reserve matters application for approval. The reserve matters for the construction of 156 new homes with associated infrastructure, including drainage, highways, open space, SUDs, and surface water drainage, including conditions 4, 8 and 17 of the outline plan application 2019-0183 out on land at Redruth Drive, Mansfield, land off Old Newark Road, Redruth Drive, Mansfield, has been granted planning permission with conditions. Thank you. Move on to agenda item 5, which is a planning application reference 2023-0209 reserve matters application for the local centre following outline planning application reference 2010-0089 ST, including reserve matters for access, the development of 169.3 hectares of land for employment, commercial, residential, retail, healthcare, community, educational and leisure uses, including the provision of a new primary school, local centre, community park, landscaping, habitat recreation and infrastructure, including roads, drainage and services between Nottingham Road and Southall Road West, Mansfield. Would I invite the officer to make a report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is an application relating to the Berry Hill Sustainable Urban Extension, otherwise known, I think, to most people, and now as Lyndhurst. Plot 4 is the identified plot for the local centre to serve the Lyndhurst development. As you'll appreciate, Lyndhurst, parts of the residential have come forward. We have an established community there. This is now the first application before you in relation to the east side of Lyndhurst. The west side has taken the housing development. So these are the local centre facilities to serve the existing residential developments and also the future developments and the employment land when it comes forward. This application is one of a suite of 3. You have the second application for additional units, additional retail units, a vet, a medical centre and a day nursery on plot 4. And then in the next month or so, you will have an application before you for a care home. Those total the development proposed to take place on plot 4. If I can refer you again to your update sheet, and again my apologies for having
having presented you with late information. Plot
Plot 4, just in a brief summary, we have a County Highways comments who've asked for slight amendments to the wording of condition 10. We have a revised approved plans list. This again relates to just updating plans so that they marry in with each other, so there are no substantive changes to the drawings. Updated information, and again, my sincere apologies over this, and I appreciate this may be somewhat confusing. Due to a drafting error, the conditions in the report became out of sequence, and you may have noticed that we have condition 19 and then reason 20. That is a drafting error. So from conditions 19 onwards, you need to move those numbers back by 1. So reason 20 is actually reason 19, and then that follows through to the end of the recommended conditions. As a consequence, there are 23 conditions and not 24 as stated in the committee report. Condition 10 does have one amendment, which is no unit hereby permitted to be brought into use until the location and specification of 2 uncontrolled pedestrian crossings on the local centre internal spine road, either side of the care home access, have been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. In relation to the application itself, we have a requirement under the outline consent for no more than 1,000 square metres of retail floor space to be provided in the local centre. A limitation of 1 hot food takeaway only, and a size restriction in terms of the unit sizes, no unit to be bigger than 500 square metres. The application you have in front of you is 5 units, 1 hot food takeaway, 1 unit of just under 500 square metres, and a cafe and drive-through at the front of the site onto Lyndhurst Road East. This part is the northern side of Plot 4. Thank you. Access is from Lyndhurst Road East, and that's a defined access which was set at the point where the Lyndhurst Road East Road Reserve Matters application was approved. We have a communal car parking area sitting between the cafe drive-through and the retail units. And in terms of the proposal and linkages, we have a number of improvements proposed, both pedestrian and in terms of highways, and also in terms of safe crossing points. The Lyndhurst Road East Road is already in place, not fully completed and adopted, but is in place, and as a consequence of this application, there are embedded within the application improvements to the road in terms of improving cyclability and pedestrian access. So what we have is a pavement that's there at the moment that will need to be widened to 3 metres as an active encouragement to pull people in to walking and cycling to the local centre. We have some improvements through the site itself to enhance and encourage cycling and walking. We have a footway link through from the local centre at this area onto the Mar, which will then facilitate a crossing across the Mar to what will be the future development on the south side of the Mar. The units themselves are relatively small. We have central parking area. We have cycle parking embedded within the site as well. The restrictions in relation to the sizes of the units is fixed. The drive-through is a new addition, but is not particularly at odds with the expectations for the local centre. What we do have is a slight overrun in terms of the 1,000 square metres floor space, 6 square metres overrun. That's considered to be de minimis in terms of potential impacts on the town centre. That's assessed as being very limited and on balance is considered acceptable. In terms of layout and design, the buildings are clad, single storey, with the cafe as a separate building. The other 5 units are in a block. They have a standard shop fascia arrangement, and we've sought to embed a design quality on this. There is a condition on the recommendations for the colour of the materials. The building, in terms of the designs, are fairly simple. The detailing will be around the shop fronts, the entrances, flat roofed, so they'll sit comfortably within the site. As of those of you who know the site, this is elevated. Certainly, when you see it from the mall, these buildings are low height. The roofs are very slightly sloping, so that will minimise their impact. The external materials are cladding. We have ongoing discussions with the applicants and the developers around the colours of this. The original scheme started off as white. That was considered to be inappropriate. The site is a prominent site. It's also currently obviously on the edge of countryside. We're looking for a softer, more muted arrangement in terms of the external appearance, but the overall shape and the arrangements around the shop front is acceptable in our views. Proposed opening times are controlled through the outline consent, but we have an indication of 6:30, approximately 6:30 opening time, 10 p.m. closure. We'll discuss that in more detail with the applicant. Obviously, at the present time, this site is the first site to come forward on the eastern side of Lyndhurst, so we have no neighbours as such, although we have an application from Bellways, which we're still discussing with them, adjacent to this site and opposite. But this is obviously the first site to come forward on the site. Highways have been in very detailed discussion over a long period of time with the applicants and us regarding this application, both to ensure that we have a commitment to improving cyclability and accessibility on foot. So we have moved effectively the local centre towards a more up-to-date approach in relation to active travel. That's an encouragement for walking and cycling. We have improvements to the crossing points on Lyndhurst Way East. What we also have is a scheme which isn't dealt with by this application, but will be dealt with by the next application, to improve the pedestrian crossing of Adams Way. That's specifically to ensure that residents on the west side are encouraged and have safe access to the local centre. Local centre itself is provided with 60 car parking spaces and 30 bicycle stand spaces. EV charging, which is required to be provided on all new commercial sites, is provided actually on the second application, which will be before you, and that will cover both this application, Reserve Matters, and also the following application. The parking standard is substandard to county standards, but on balance, it's considered this is acceptable, having regard to all the other highway measures that are being put in place. One of the provisions that's embedded within the conditions is, in the event that the car parking isn't sufficient, and has a knock-on effect on pushing casual parking onto Lyndhurst Way East. We have a condition for that to be monitored as the units come into use. In the event that there is a problem created, and obviously Lyndhurst Way East is a bus route, then there is provision to put means in place to put traffic controls in. So we've tried to forward think possible scenarios in this situation. We have the controlled crossing. We do have landscaping proposed on this, and as you'll see from the conditions, there is a landscaping condition attached. That is purely to just tweak one or two matters in relation to the landscaping. The site isn't required to deliver BNG. It was submitted before the mandatory BNG came into force, but what we do require is some biodiversity, green infrastructure matters to be embedded in the scheme. We have negotiated quite extensively on the landscaping, so we've looked to change what would be your standard grass planting in the bits and pieces of green areas to woodland, so more mixed arrangement. We've required trees to go in as well, bat-friendly lighting, and so to seek to embed within the scheme as many ecology improvements that we can. We feel that the scheme is actually appropriate. The units are appropriate. They're suitable for what is going to be a brand new local centre on what will be a brand new estate. There was a concern as to what would happen in the event that the retail units became under pressure to convert to other uses. So as a consequence, we've attached conditions, we're proposing conditions which actually require them to stay as retail units. The hot food takeaway is a one-off. We're not envisaging that expanding beyond that, and the controls we're recommending will give us significant control, we feel, over this and the future uses and future pressures to perhaps move into other uses on this site. We feel this is a supportable scheme. It can be implemented separately from the second application before you. We hope that they will actually be implemented together, because that will make up one cohesive local centre and will pull in customers and users very quickly in our view. But there is some duplication, therefore, between conditions on this application and the next one, on the off chance that this might not occur. So we've sought to be as belt and braces as we can with this application, but also as positive and encouraging as we can, because the local centre is one that the residents, we are very aware of, have been waiting for some considerable time now.
Thank you for your report. I've got a speaker. Could I invite James Bergeron to the podium? He's the agent. When you're ready, James, if you turn your mic on, you've got 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to speak here this evening. My name is James Bergeron, and I'm the agent for this application. The proposals subject to this reserved matters application seek approval for 5 retail units as outlined by your planning officer, which include a convenience store, hot food takeaway, and a separate cafe drive-through, and have been submitted pursuant to the approved outline permission from 2014. It's fair to say that the proposals have been a long time coming, and whilst only one letter of support has been submitted from a local resident, we are aware that there is much more support locally, as residents of the already built houses desire the amenities proposed to support this sustainable urban extension area, which the application will go a long way to providing. Throughout the application process, we have worked very closely with your officers and numerous updates to the design and layout of the scheme have been provided. We would like to take this opportunity to thank officers for their hard work and their assistance. In respect to the retail units, they're all small scale, suitable for a local centre and will provide the local amenities for existing and future residents of the area and will reduce the need to travel for residents further afield for convenient shopping goods. The design has evolved significantly during the course of this Reserved Matters application, and it provides a modern and functional local centre that is wholly befitting to its location. The materials palette as outlined will be agreed by way of condition. Parking provision at a level we assert is wholly appropriate for the size and scale of the local centre is provided within the confines of the site. Following approval, my client is eager to start works on site as soon as possible, and we will continue to work closely with your officers to ensure that all conditional requirements are met and that the local centre can finally come to fruition. On a final note, all technical matters have been addressed throughout the course of the application process, such as ecology, landscaping, archaeology. And in the absence of any technical or policy objections, the proposals are asserted to be acceptable. I would like to thank you for your time and respectfully request that you approve the application in line with your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
James, do you members have any questions of James? Councillor Answer.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one question. You mentioned the fact that the centre's been long overdue. What do you think would be the timeline when it would be completed?
I think it's probably one for my client, that, but I do know that they are very, very keen to get on site as soon as possible to get condition discharges in following approval. So just as soon as possible, as soon as they can.
Stevenson.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to see, and I expect you would have had interest in tenants for the units, particularly the coffee. I think we could see a logo on there as to who that might be. But in regards to the other units, can you just share some insight as to who is interested or what talks have already taken place and who those tenants might be?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Again, that's probably more of a commercial matter for my client. I am aware that there are some names going in there, such as Domino's, Tesco. Probably is going to be, as you've seen from the logo there, Starbucks. But yeah, there are some big name brands that are looking to go into the site. But I believe my client has had a lot of interest for pretty much all of the units.
Any further questions from members? No, thank you. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Do members have any questions of the officer? No? Applications. Could I have a proposer and a second for this? Councillor Stevenson, Councillor Hensley. In debate mode, anyone want to comment on this application? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm the ward councillor for this ward, and I can agree with what James has said, that the residents of the houses that have been built on the Lindist estate have been looking forward to this for a long time. Some have been in there nearly 6 years now, and we still don't have any shops or a medical centre or anything like that. It's obviously what they want and what they need. I can't see anything from the report that would encourage anybody to reject the recommendation, so I will be supporting it.
Any other councillors want to make a comment? I recommend sentiments. It's been long awaited, and I think it'll be welcome to the residents already living in the area. Could we move to the vote then, please, by show of hands? All those in favour? Thank you. That's another unanimous decision. So planning application reference 2023-0209 reserved. The reserved matters application for a new local centre following outline planning application reference 2010-089 ST, including reserved matters for access for the development of a 1.693 hectare of land for employment, commercial, residential, retail, healthcare, community, educational and leisure uses, including the provision of a new primary school, local centre, community park, landscaping, habitat creation and the infrastructure, including roads, drainage and services between Nottingham Road and Southwell Road West, Mansfield, has been approved subject to conditions. Thank you. Move on to item 6, which is planning application reference 2023-0201, 210, I should say. Full erection of a single-storey building to be used as a veterinary centre, a single-storey building comprising of a medical centre and retail units, and a two-storey building to be used as a day nursery with associated access, parking, roads and infrastructure, plot 4, Lindhurst land between Nottingham Road and Southwell Road West, Mansfield. Could I invite the officer to make a report, please?
Thank you, Chair. And again, if I can refer you to the update sheet. County Highways amendments to condition 10. The revised approved plans list, as you'll appreciate, some of these plans will be cross-referenced against the previous application. So these are just for updating revision numbers. We then have a series of references to, again, and I do offer my sincere apologies for this, but again, there was slippage in terms of the conditions numbering. So we've listed where you need to read them from. So reason 16 should read as condition 15 and then onwards. And then amendments to conditions 3 prior to commencement for the details of the external materials of the substation. Condition 5, prior to first use of any building, the existing footway fronting the site to be widened. Condition 12, no unit hereby permitted to be brought into use until the uncontrolled crossings on the local centre Spine Road have been submitted. Condition 24, amended. Details of external lighting at before slab level. Condition 25, no development above slab level. 28, notwithstanding submitted plans, slab level for revised soft landscaping proposal. And condition 32, amended. Prior to commencement of use of any building, proposed hours of operation. This application is the second application, and this makes up the majority of plot 4 in the local centre. Comprises veterinary centre, which is a single-storey separate building. Single-storey building comprising medical centre, which was required under the outline applications and the section 106. Retail units, and then a separate nursery building. A lot of the information on this application is a duplication of the reserved matters. So the access road and the improvements to Lyndhurst Way East are included within this scheme, which means that in the event that the reserved matters didn't come forward, this scheme could be delivered. As I've said previously, we hope that we are hopeful, very hopeful, that the two will be delivered together, but obviously we need to cover all bases in this. So we've been quite robust in terms of the number of conditions requiring things to be done under the full application. The full application is freestanding of the outline, so it's not captured by that. As a consequence, the large number of conditions you see on it reflect what would be required if this were a reserved matters application. The building's a single story other than the nursery. They follow the same design approach, which was agreed with the developers, so that we have a consistent look to the local centre across the two areas. The veterinary surgery has moved from a two-storey building to a single-storey building. The quantum of unit is cumulatively with the reserved matters is above the 1,000 threshold. Now, technically, because this is a full application, it's not captured by that 1,000 restriction, but it is captured by policy, and therefore there's had to be an assessment in terms of these units. Now, that only relates to the retail unit, the veterinary centre, the GP centre and the day nursery are all uses which are not necessarily town centre uses, but they are ones which are considered appropriate for a local centre. So there is an assessment, and within the report we've detailed on the basis that we've done the assessment in terms of the limited number of retail units proposed, and we've considered on balance that there is no policy conflict with them. Parking is provided for these units. The day nursery has its own parking. The EV charging points, which would serve the entire local centre, are contained within this full application. The cycle parking is provided alongside, and the expectation is that parking will be the cumulative parking between the two areas will be used by customers, not necessarily only going to the vet. They're only parking in the parking areas within this full application. So it's communal parking for everyday use by all visitors. There is expected there will be some combined trips. So one of the advantages of having a day nursery within a site is that it will be highly likely to attract people who will drop off their children and then nip into one of the shops for, say, picking up just convenience goods. This is one of the attractions for bringing these sort of uses into the site. In the same way, the veterinary surgery is likely to have that same sort of functionality, so combined trips. We have a link on this application, which is a little pathway, as you can see, on the north side of the day centre, between the day centre and the local care home site, of a pathway. That pathway is wide enough, and that will link through to the site boundary. Site boundary is adjacent to the Bellway development land. So one of the discussions that's been had both with the developers of the local centre and with Bellways is to ensure that there is an easy pedestrian route which can run from the Bellway site and residents to get on to the local centre without having to track around to Lyndhurst Road East and walk along the spine road. We think that's an encouragement. That will act as an encouragement. Parking provision is shown on the drawing. The landscaping here is a little tighter in terms that there is less available space, but we have encouraged a consistent approach, and there is a landscape master plan for the entire local centre other than the care home. So we have a consistency of approach across the two sites. Lighting again and ecology are taken into account by the conditions. So we've sought to achieve an equilibrium between the two sites, so we don't have one site providing a lesser quality of development than the other. Single-storey buildings again. This is slightly less visible in that when you look from the mall, this part of the site is a little further away, a little more distant. But again, we've sought to minimise the height, and we'll be discussing again materials and external colours. The intention is to get a consistent look to the local centre. Associated with this, because it's a full application, we're able to take Section 106 obligations. Now, those obligations wouldn't be paid on the full application through the outline consent and the Section 106 on the original Linter. So they sit freestanding. So we've embedded, where appropriate, obligations. One of those obligations, and which I referred to previously, is the Toucan crossing on the Adams Way, Lyndhurst Way roundabout. Financial contribution couldn't be secured through the reserve matters. So the agreement is to secure through this application in part, and then in relation to the future development, the future development to come forward for the remainder of Plot 4, we're also seeking the same contribution, but that will be before you for discussion when that application comes to committee. £50,000 contribution towards the Toucan crossing. That won't fully fund it, but it will make a substantial contribution towards it. We have a financial contribution of £10,000 towards reviewing the parking and monitoring surveys for the Lyndhurst Road East. That's in relation to any overspill parking that occurs should we find that the parking isn't sufficient for the local centre. Travel plan review and monitoring fee. Provision of a legal maintenance easement for the siting of highway infrastructure along the northern boundary of the site, fronting Lyndhurst Way East, and the requirement for the medical centre to be provided within Unit 8A and 8B. One of the things we've been very careful about with this application is to identify on each unit its proposed use. What we're not doing, therefore, is giving free rein to occupiers as they want, and to make use of the permitted development changes of use right. So the medical centre is required to be provided under Section 106. There wasn't an appropriate, or there wasn't a suitable location under the reserve matters, so we've captured it under this full application. Again, we put a restriction on in terms of the uses. So the veterinary centre, the veterinary surgery will have to be a veterinary surgery, the day nursery will have to be a day nursery, and the medical centre will have to be medical or associated services. Section 106 specifically referred to a medical centre and a GP surgery. The discussions, which have been quite protracted with the ICB over a length of time, indicates that there is unlikely to be a GP surgery coming forward on this. We would prefer not to lose the opportunity to have a medical related or quasi-related use within the local centre. So we are recommending widening this obligation out slightly to refer to a medical centre and or associated uses. That's to cover in the event that we think that, and we are fairly confident that there won't be a GP surgery interested in taking a satellite unit here. There may well be a private GP interested. There may well be a dentist. At this point in time, we don't know. That range could even encompass as far as somebody offering ear cleaning services, or potentially opticians type services. We're just keen to see some community type use in these units, and we feel this is one way of achieving. This is the most appropriate and viable way of achieving that. Recommendation is to approve, subject to the Section 106.
Thank you for the report. again, I'd like to invite James Bergeron to the podium. Again, you've got 4 minutes, James, to talk about this proposal.
Well, thanks again, Chair. I think I'm going to try and avoid repetition from what I said previously and from what the planning officer has just said. So I'll try and cover off, probably cut down a lot of what I've written here, but try and cover off some of the main points. I think the uses have been quite clearly outlined there. What I would say is that if we could have done, we would have submitted this full application as part of the previous application, but we couldn't do so because of the floor space restrictions, etc., on that outline planning permission. So in terms of the concerns raised about it being comprehensive, yes, it will be comprehensively developed. Both sites will effectively be developed as one. As noted, that this is a full application as the way we had to submit it, and a freestanding application site that does enable or has entailed Section 106 contributions towards providing £50,000 towards the Toucan crossing on Adams Way, Lyndhurst Way, etc. It's probably worth noting that the care home applicant on the adjacent plots has also been asked for the same sum. So once that comes forward and that application is approved, the total amount should be £100,000. I think then, to avoid repetition, we consider that the parking levels proposed on the layout is acceptable again, and again that the local centre design follows both parts of the site and will provide a comprehensive design approach across that should benefit and provide a suitable local centre to the benefit of local residents. So I'll probably conclude there and just say thank you again for your time, and I respectfully request again that you approve the application in line with your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Do members have any questions of James? As indicated. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Do members have any questions of the officers? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Councillor. That is a difficult one in that we don't have any control over occupiers. What we do have is the scope within the within this section 106, which we didn't have within the previous one, to widen it out, because the previous one specified, although it referred to a medical centre, then when you dug into the section 106, it referred to a GP surgery, and it even set the number of surgery rooms. Now, there was an expectation, obviously that was 2012, the planning permission was granted, that could come forward. The discussions, and I would say I haven't had discussions with the ICB for probably about 8 months now. Their view was that they considered it would be unlikely that an NHS GP would come forward. It's not on their programme list, and they have a specific programme in terms of rolling out primary care facilities and their strategy, and this doesn't really mesh with their current strategy. What I do think it does, though, is it shouldn't just be removed. The section 106 originally actually gave a release mechanism. So you had to mark it for a certain period of time. If there was no interest, then there was an offer arrangement, and then it released itself. Now, that would mean that was lost entirely. The applicants have following discussions with us, have agreed to this current arrangement whereby it's embedded into the current section 106. I think it is a case of actually, we're making a shot at trying to achieve this. I can't realistically say to you for definite, yes, there will be either a medical centre or an aligned medical centre in there. But from my point of view, from planning point of view, I think there's enough of an argument to say we should at least make that effort.
Thank you. So what I'm understanding is that we're actually possibly in a better position because we know we're not going to get a GP surgery, but there are a number of other medical services that you feel may want to come forward for the use of that building. Is that fair to say?
I think so. I mean, there are a lot of quasi medical things around the counselling, even opticians to an extent, because they do hearing testing. There are people now doing specialist ear assessments.
Okay.
So there's more scope than there would have been in 2012, I feel.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
Just one really on the toucan on Adams Way, bottom of Lindis, Way West. I think we've heard that we will get more, including the care home contribution, £100,000. How much do they cost?
That's Councillor, that's a difficult question. The county haven't to cost it. They have to design it. The design work hasn't been done. It is quite a significant amount of work. One of the issues they have is that until they know what services are underneath Adams Way, which may be affected, which are likely to be affected. So this is things like cabling in particular. They can't cost. So the 100,000 was tabled as the offer, and County Highways did consider that would be a fair contribution towards it. In a worst case scenario, it could cost several hundreds of thousands of pounds, or it might cost only a couple of £100,000. This won't fund it entirely, but it is a significant contribution towards it.
So just to follow up on that, can we guarantee a contribution from Bellway when they build the rest of the estate?
The position with Lyndhurst is that we have the reserve matters application from Bellway under the original outline consent. We cannot take a contribution from them for their development. The remainder of Lyndhurst, and as you'll appreciate, a large chunk of it hasn't been built out. The outline application is now at a point about a year, beginning of the year, I think, where they can't submit any more reserve matters application. Now, it's an allocated site. There is obviously a commitment. We have a partly built out sustainable urban extension. There will need to be another outline application submitted to be able to bring forward the rest of the development. It's a large site. We're not expecting it to fall away. And at that point, we will be looking at the Section 106 obligations. Some of those will need to be carried forward from the existing Section 106, because not all of them have been paid. And obviously, these are relating to obligations that were fixed in relation to the whole of the development. And we appreciate we only have the housing part. We don't have the employment. We don't have all the housing. We've only just now going to secure the local centre. There may well be scope to take some more money off future developers for funding the toucan crossing. In a worst case scenario, it may be that we have to ask the county council if they can programme it in. But at the moment, we're being optimistic in relation to this.
Any further questions? No one's indicating. Thank you. Could I have a proposer and seconder? Councillor Jack Stevenson and Councillor Anson. We're in debate mode. Anyone want to make a comment? No? Could we move to the vote then, please? Show of hands. All those in favour? Thank you. Again, that is unanimous. Forgive me, I've got a lot of reading to do on this one. So I'll read it out. Planning application reference 2023-02-104, erection of single-storey buildings to be used as a veterinary centre, single-storey building comprising of a medical centre and retail units, and two-storey building to be used as a day nursery with associated access, parking roads and infrastructure. Plot 4, Lindisland between Nottingham Road and Southall Road, West Mansfield, has been granted planning permission with conditions and subject to the legal 106 agreement, which includes the obligations that are set out, a financial contribution of £50,000 towards the provision of a Toucan crossing on Adams Way and Lyndhurst Way roundabout, a financial contribution of £10,000 towards Nottinghamshire's highway costs for reviewing parking, monitoring surveys over a 10-year period, a travel plan review and monitoring fee for 5-year period, £7,500, provision of a legal maintenance easement for the siting of highways infrastructure in the verge along the northern boundary of the site, fronting Lyndhurst Way East, to include for items such as cycle route signage, and requirement for the provision of a medical centre and associated services within units 8A and 8B. And 2, the delegated authority be granted to the Assistant Director of Planning, Growth and Major Projects to issue the conditional planning permission once the Section 106 legal agreement has been agreed, signed and sealed. Thank you. All right, we're nearly at the end, folks. I'll move on to agenda item 8, which is the appendices of Human Rights Act and use classes appendices 1 and 2. It's on page 129 to 132. Take it you've all read the change in uses. Can I have a show of hands to accept those? Noted. Thank you. And finally, item 9, the planning appeals decisions, 14th of October to the 12th of November. As you can see, there were no appeals in that period. So thank you very much for your attendance. Pretty long but excellent committee. Thank you. Safe journey home.